Hello and welcome to today's Green Business Podcast. In today's podcast, I will talk about the 5 trends that will change sustainability. Some of these might seem a little bit out there, but I really think that in the years down the line, they will absolutely transform the landscape. Very keen to know what you think, so do just get in touch and let me know your thoughts, really. So let's get started. I really think that electric vehicles will become a reality. I really think we're at the dawn of electric vehicles. Yes, I know the mileage or the range isn't there yet, but remember when we looked at the old combustion engine versus the horse, people were saying things like, "Oh, actually it breaks down. My horse never breaks down." You couldn't do that many miles with the old combustion engines, but we were very much at the start of things. I think if anyone's sort of doubting that, I've got a little video here, so let's have a look at that. So for those that are listening, this is I think it's a 7-seater Tesla against a Ferrari F. As you can see, this is a 7-seater. This is a mum with 3 kids in the back, some suitcases, and a dog out pulling a Ferrari. It's just, if that performance doesn't speak for itself, then I don't know. So I think there's real reason to believe we're at the death of the combustion engine, and it's only a matter of time. Put on top of that self-driving vehicles, and all of a sudden, I think we have a future which looks very different. I can imagine that the technology that comes with electric vehicles will transform everything again. I can imagine that Uber will make a switch to autonomous vehicles, and that you invest in an electric car that you then, if you don't use it or when you're at work, you hire it out to a firm like Uber so it can pick up and drop off passengers. I really believe this will come down the line very quickly. I think in the next decade, electric vehicles will be a reality. In the next 2 decades, we'll have autonomous vehicles. I have no doubt about that. Okay, very closely linked to that is obviously, again, Tesla, but there's many others out there doing it. It's battery storage. Again, I think this, will be very quick. I bet you in the next 5 years or so, we're already seeing battery storage being rolled out. And I can see a time in the next 5 years where, these are being installed just as normal as boilers. If I think about some of the applications, I think once battery storage becomes mainstream, renewable energy will become mainstream. At the moment, we always have the problem that renewable energy is finite. So if it's a windy day, you have more. If it's not such a windy day, you have less. All of a sudden, you can store this. So, particularly with solar panels, when you're out of the house, you don't use the energy. Once you can store that, actually, I think we're getting to, to a piece where people become prosumers. They use more energy, sell it back to the grid. And all of a sudden, I think the implications from that are massive. I think renewable energy will become much more viable, but also the way we use energy from that will be very different. I think the grid will have to change. It will have to become a smart grid, having to take into account that a lot of consumers will turn into prosumers, start generating their own energy, start selling it back. People are able to monitor how much energy they use and make investment decisions. Some technologies will become obsolete. If renewable energy becomes much more efficient, maybe we don't need boilers. We don't need gas boilers. So again, I think if we're at the dawn of battery storage technology, and once it becomes a reality, I think it'll transform our industry no end. So another trend which I think is already here is linked data and the Internet of Things. I was quite surprised that this is already happening. I went into Maplin just the other day, just because I wanted to. I never really sort of go there, but I just wanted to have a look around. And actually, the Internet of Things and smart sensors that they're selling is incredible. You obviously have your Hive and your Nest and your smart thermostats, but there are a lot of applications that I didn't know were there already, such as sensors that can tell you if your washing machine is leaking. And so, yes, I was quite surprised to see that, you know, the Internet of Things is already happening. And then I sort of classed that into the set of linked data, because I feel a lot of those technologies like smart meters, you know, smarter kettles and all of that falls into this category of having more access to data and see how things are performing. If I look at how this will change things, I think it'll change how we interact with other human beings. I think it will change how we interact with our energy companies. All of a sudden, we have a lot more insight into our consumption. I think it goes further. You know, it looks how we interact with other companies, our government, and as a society. I think if we look at government data, that will have to be made more freely available. I think government will be held to account with much more insight, and, you know, they will have to become much more transparent, as will companies have to be. If I look at the sort of economic drivers, I think all of a sudden receive so much better insight. You know, if we look, you know, go to an industry that I know quite well, the energy sector, obviously we receive so half-hourly data on how we use energy. There's no sort of guesstimates. There's clear, you know, patterns to your usage. You'll be able to see which supply will be best for you. You know, there'll be a lot of apps that will be able to use some of your data and be able to advise you, which is your best supplier, but also what applications might be using much more power. And with this better insight becomes, you know, greater efficiencies. I think from a social point of view, we'll just demand a lot more transparency. And corporations, you can already see that they're moving this way. You know, like, they're publishing a lot more data. I think McDonald's, in regards to sort of open data, they sort of encourage customers to ask their toughest questions and then showed people what was happening. So again, I think this is actually already happening. It's not necessarily a trend that's coming down the line, but I think it's going to grow and increase into our society and industries. Okay, another one that it seems a little bit left field, but I'm really excited about 3D printing. I think this will transform sustainability. I think it's the closest thing we have to the Star Trek replicator. We can now print layer by layer any 3D object based on a digital file. I mean, how big is that? We can do this in full color, and we have hundreds of different materials to do this. That's, you know, it's mind-boggling. And we can print very complex structures, you know, from custom houses. We can print anything. I'll get onto some of those things. The cost savings are enormous, but not just that. Just imagine the carbon savings. Currently, if you want to, let's say, buy a case for your iPhone or Android phone, it will be mass-produced, probably in a factory in China, and it will then be shipped over to the UK. Can you imagine if you are able to press print on your iPhone case and get it printed in 20 minutes? There's no or limited carbon associated to that, and definitely a lot less if it's you know, made from if it's made in China and shipped over. I think what that means is we've looked already at some of the trends. You know, battery technology will turn us into prosumers. I think the same with 3D printers. We'll probably become our own creators, and it'll be as simple as going online, downloading a file, and printing out what you want. I mean, the applications are sort of mind-blowing. You know, I mentioned the iPhone case, but, you know, people are printing artificial limbs on 3D printers. Again, I can imagine if you break your cup holder for your toothbrush, you just print it out. And I really think this will be a big thing. There's a lot of hype around 3D printing, but I think it's a reality, and I think it's probably a little bit like the early days of the internet. Everyone was excited and it didn't seem to go anywhere. And then all of a sudden we had a sort of dot-com boom, then we had a crash. I think 3D printing is absolutely here to stay, and I think it will be here a lot sooner than we think. And finally, there is Bitcoin technology. I think Bitcoin is a disruptive technology, and I think it will have a big impact. I don't know if it's Bitcoin or the central ledger behind it. And what that means is maybe the Bitcoin technology will move on and Bitcoin itself will fall by the wayside, and there might be another digital currency. I think a lot of banks and financial institutions are jumping on this. I know a lot of well-established companies are behind this. Microsoft, I think they're behind Ethereum, if I'm right, rather than Bitcoin itself. But it's a similar or the same technology. I think this probably fits in with a wider agenda. I think what Bitcoin will do is it will eliminate banks, or particularly central banks. It will have a big impact on credit card fees, etc. Sometimes to test the usefulness of a technology, you have to look at some of the darker places in society, i.e. if you looked at the internet probably 20 years ago, the first sector that really proved that there was a commercial viable, commercial viability on the internet was the porn industry. I think Bitcoin has proven itself, particularly on the dark web. It's obviously not ideal, but what that does prove is there is a market for it. It does function, it does work, and I think that's something to bear in mind. I believe that Bitcoin technology is part of a wider piece of decentralization. I think central banks control, the currency. I think Bitcoin will take that away. And if we look at the Bitcoin technology, in particular the ledger, I think what that will do in industries, it will create smart contracts. So you probably don't need legal people involved, or less. So I think particularly in our sphere of renewable energy, I think it's a lot easier to track where energy is coming from. And again, the Bitcoin technology will give that sort of stream from generation to consuming energy, and make that absolutely clear. Now, it's very much a one that's coming down the line. So it's at this point in time, it's not that well established in the mainstream, but I believe Bitcoin technology will have a big impact. So they are my 5 trends really that I see will make a big difference in the very near future. I hope you enjoyed my 2 cents on what I think is coming down the line, but please do get in touch to let me know what your thoughts are. Thank you.